Human Dolls is a horror genre which will appeal to a certain audience that will expect like a spooky atmosphere and a creepy narrative. So we really wanted to scare the audience, so we started off by using a setting such as the old Victorian house. So Victorian houses are large and open, which means that they have the connotations of mystery, isolation and power. We thought it would be really good to use a Victorian house because it will engage the audience, and we used it as an establishing shot to quickly create this atmosphere at the start so that the audience will just be intrigued from the very beginning. To make the house appear really powerful, we made it so that it was all in frame, so this really made it dominant and would have made the audience feel inferior. We also challenged horror conventions. The antagonist, Ethel, she wears bright colours, which is quite uncommon for antagonists because they usually wear dark colours to illustrate their nature, so black usually represents death and fear. But Ethel, she wears white and burgundy, and this is quite interesting because white is linked to innocence and purity, which Ethel is not. So these bright colours actually act as a layer and a mask for Ethel, so the audience will actually see her transform into who she actually is, so it was just a facade. The Human Dolls is set during the Victorian times, so it was really important to represent this particular social group to make it believable and relatable. We were able to do this by adjusting the personality of each character. We had to represent young people because the victims were young girls. And we did this by including makeup and dresses so that they would appear more innocent and childlike. We also made Ethel an introvert because we thought that Victorians at the time, they're more likely to keep their personal business to themselves. So this made it more interesting to the audience because they don't know as much about the person. The film is a psychological horror, which means that it will appeal to a very specific group of people. There will be a really twisted narrative which may be attractive to people who like manipulation in an antagonist. Because the film is at age rating of 15, teenagers will be more obliged to go and see it. There will be more horrific scenes which they would be able to have an interest for. Females would be more attracted to our film because the cast is made up of actresses, and we decided on this because we thought that it would be easier to show vulnerable people through females because they are physically less able to defend themselves in contrast to men. So I think a female audience would be able to relate to their vulnerability and weakness more. In the modern day, people are more attracted to new ideas, and the Human Dolls is made up of a female cast, which means that the damsel in distress is like a strong lead character who, although she is vulnerable, she does defend herself, and I think that a female audience would like to see this because it's a girl who's able to defend herself and be strong. She doesn't need a man or a boy to help her. Suspense is immediately set up in the opening sequence, so the audience who have paid to watch this film would know that it's a horror, so therefore the audience would expect to get scared, and we thought that it would be important to adjust the brightness and just create a dark tone, and we did this through sound effects as well as the costume design. In order to engage the audience, we made the sequence dark and haunting so that it would be scary and quickly set up the idea that there's something to fear in the opening. We have one major jump scare at the end, and I think the involvement of the jump scare will attract our target audience because it will be fulfilling their desire to get scared and have an adrenaline. The product is a raw material which is original and different. I think there are many companies that look out for films that are different from like the ones that we see on the big screen because they attract an audience that are looking for something new. And Channel 4 aspires to represent the unrepresented, and they may consider distributing our film because it's something that the audience wouldn't have seen at the time, so it would be quite different from a typical blockbuster horror film. The cast will be British. It's easier to find the actresses and actors because it's filmed in this location, and I think because the actors, they will also be new and raw, so it's more focused on the talent they have rather than the experience. And I think Channel 4 like to recruit actors that have like good talent instead of the recognition. I think I've made significant improvements from the first film production, The Box, because the editing for that film was quite inexperienced. I had to learn how to use the software Adobe Premiere Pro firsthand, and this was quite difficult to do without using like video tutorials. I didn't have any previous background knowledge, which meant that the editing for The Box is a result of the lack of experience I had at the time. I also learned how to use camera angles and how I could use it to convey meaning. And in The Box we used very simple camera angles and movements, which consequently made the short film less engaging.